In May of this year, Americans said they felt worse about the economy than they did during the 2008 financial crash. Worse than the pandemic. Worse than any recession since the survey started tracking this in 1952. That same month, household wealth was sitting near an all-time high. Unemployment was under 4.5%. The stock market was within reach of a record. Both of those things happened at the same time to the same country. So which one is a lie? That's what this video is actually about. Not is the economy good or bad. Everyone's already arguing about that in the comments of every finance channel on this platform. This is about something almost nobody explains clearly. Why your gut and the headlines can both be right and what that gap actually means for your money. Stick with me because the answer gets stranger the deeper you go. And there's one stat near the end that changes how you should think about your own numbers completely. Let's meet Jordan for a second because his story is the story a lot of you are about to recognize. He's 26. He works a real job. He pays his bills on time. He does the things you're supposed to do, and yet every single month he ends up in the same place, staring at his bank account, wondering where it all went. Jordan is not alone, and by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why. Here's the number. The University of Michigan's Consumer Sentiment Index, the survey that's tracked how Americans feel about their money since 1952, hit 44.8 in May, the lowest reading in the history of the survey, lower than 2008, lower than COVID. Now, here's the part almost nobody follows up on. By June, that number had already started climbing back, up to 49.5. Still bad, still historically low, but climbing. What moved it? Gas prices came down. Read that again. The single most extreme reading of public despair about the American economy in 74 years of data. And it tracked the price at the pump almost in real time. Not GDP, not the stock market, not the unemployment rate, gasoline. And that's actually the whole point of this video. People aren't reacting to the economy as an abstraction. They're reacting to the 3 or 4 numbers they personally touch every week. What's in the tank, what's in the cart, what's left in the account on the 28th. When those numbers move, the mood moves with them instantly, faster than any economist's dashboard can even measure it. Which means the gap everyone keeps talking about isn't really a mystery. It's a translation problem. The economy is being measured in aggregates. People are living it in receipts. Let's start with the second piece of this puzzle, because it's the one that'll make you feel the most validated. The inflation number you've been hearing about for the last few years, the one that peaked around 9% in 2022 and then came back down to roughly 3%, that number is calculated using a methodology the government actually changed back in 1983. Before that change, the way they measured housing costs was different. And when researchers go back and reconstruct inflation using the older method, the numbers look very different. The 2022 peak wasn't closer to 9%, it was closer to 18%. And the so-called victory on inflation that economists kept announcing, the drop back to 3% by the old standard, was still running closer to 8%. That single gap in how inflation gets measured reportedly explains roughly 3/4 of the entire mystery of why people don't feel the inflation relief they keep being told is here. So when Jordan goes to the grocery store and swears things cost way more than the news is letting on, he's not crazy. The measuring stick changed and nobody told him. So if it's not really about gas prices, what is Jordan actually feeling underneath it? Here's where it gets uncomfortable. As of the most recent Federal Reserve data, the top 1% of American households now hold 31.7% of all household wealth in this country. the highest share on record since the Fed started tracking it in 1989. In dollar terms, that's roughly $55 trillion sitting with the top 1%. That's approximately equal to the combined net worth of the entire bottom 90% of the country. Not the bottom 10%, not the bottom half. The bottom 90% combined roughly matches what the top 1% alone is holding. So when a headline tells you household wealth just hit a record, that record is disproportionately a record for people who were already at the top. The average number goes up. Jordan's number doesn't move. He's not imagining that disconnect. It's sitting right there in the Fed's own data. And economists have actually had to invent new words just to describe this gap, because the old ones stopped being accurate. Recession showed up in 2022 to explain why people felt bad during a technically okay economy. By 2026, that wasn't enough anymore. So now you've got terms like vipression and permacession floating around, because what started as a mood is starting to feel like a permanent condition. The feeling didn't pass. It dug in. Here's a re-hook for you, because we haven't even gotten to the most unsettling part yet. Think about this. The New York Fed's own household survey found that the average American's expected probability of rising unemployment hit 43.9%, a one-year high. Meanwhile, the actual unemployment rate sits at a historically unremarkable 4.3%. People are bracing for layoffs at a level that doesn't match the job market data at all. That's not pessimism for no reason. That's a signal. And some economists are now arguing that the sentiment gap itself, the mismatch between how people feel and what the headline numbers say, might actually be picking up on real risks that the official data just isn't designed to capture. Things like uneven exposure to market volatility, costs that GDP was never built to measure, like time scarcity, financial stress, the mental load of living paycheck to paycheck even when you technically earn enough. The feeling might be ahead of the data, and there's a concrete reason why that's possible. Consumer spending accounts for roughly 2/3 of US GDP. If sentiment this dire eventually translates into an actual pullback in spending, it will hit corporate revenue. So the feeling of a bad economy can actually manufacture a real economic slowdown. Even when the starting conditions were fine, the vibe becomes the event. Now, here's the one I promised you at the top, because this is the part that almost nobody sits with long enough to explain. America's happiness ranking is falling faster than any economic indicator. The US dropped from 11th to somewhere around 23rd or 24th in the World Happiness Report rankings over just 2 years. And that decline is running in the literal opposite direction of GDP per capita on the same timeline. The economy is technically growing, the country is technically getting richer, and people are reporting being less happy. That's not a mood problem. That's a measurement problem. And it's not just America. A similar inflation methodology distortion shows up in roughly 10 other developed economies using comparable measurement conventions. This isn't a uniquely American psychological quirk. It might be a systemic flaw in how modern economies measure cost of living. And here's where it gets personal for Jordan and for you. Fast forward a decade. Jordan's done well for himself. Let's say he's landed a $250,000 salary in New York City. Sounds like a lot, right? After combined federal, state, and city taxes, he's losing roughly $90,000 off the top. Then he's paying rent on a median one-bedroom. Then, if he's got a kid, childcare runs $10,000 to $20,000 a year. And suddenly, that headline number has been reduced to something that feels genuinely tight. Feeling broke at a great salary isn't a mindset problem. It's arithmetic. And it's arithmetic that most net worth headlines are never going to show you. So, what do you actually do with all of this? The first thing is to stop measuring your financial reality against headlines that were never designed to describe your life. The aggregate numbers, total household net worth, GDP growth, official inflation, those are averages built on a distribution that skews heavily toward people who are already wealthy. Your personal financial reality is not the average. For months now, over half of consumers have spontaneously told researchers that high prices are weighing down their personal finances. And that's in the same survey that publishes the official sentiment data. The feeling is real. The question is what you do with it. The second thing is to understand that the cost of living is likely higher than the number you've been quoted. Not because anyone is lying to you, but because the methodology for measuring it hasn't kept pace with the actual experience of living in 2026. Which means you need to be building your personal budget around what things actually cost you, not what the CPI says they cost. And the third thing, and this is the one that ties everything together, is that the sentiment gap itself is a signal worth paying attention to, not a mood to dismiss. Jordan is not broken. The economy is not broken. But the way we measure the economy and the way that measurement gets reported to people like Jordan, that part has a real problem. And knowing that changes everything, because it means the gap between the headline and your lived experience is not a personal failure. It's a structural one. If this video made you think about your own finances differently, drop a comment below and tell me where you feel the gap the most. Rent, groceries, just a general weight of it. And if you want to understand what to actually do about it, how to build stability when the ground keeps shifting, the next video is right there. It picks up exactly where this one leaves off. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one.